Hey everybody, Green Films Official here. I hope you guys have been doing well since the last time we saw each other here on YouTube. But yeah, as you saw in the title of this video, I wrote a creepypasta, so I just want to yap about it for a bit. The story in question is called The Public Transport Killer. It's been up on my Instagram page for about a week now, but I figured, hey, what the heck? I'll do a video on it in case some of you guys haven't seen it yet. Just to start off with, I want to talk a bit about what creepypasta means to me personally. Also, just to preface this part of the video, some of what I'm about to say I have already said in my review for The Blob over on Letterboxd, but it's relevant to my history with creepypasta. So while I have always been an appreciator of the horror genre, I never really watched that many full-fledged horror films as a kid. The reason for this is pretty simple: good parenting. But that's not to say I didn't get my horror fix. I usually got it from old 50s monster movies, which were a little more appropriate for my age range, the Goosebumps books and TV show, and online horror media. And obviously, online horror media includes creepypastas. I was both fascinated and terrified by creepypastas as a kid. As embarrassing as it is to admit now, Sonic.exe gave me nightmares. Before I was acquainted with Michael Myers or Freddy Krueger, I was acquainted with Slender Man and Smile Dog. And I think a lot of these stories and a lot of these characters introduced young me to just how powerful the horror genre can be and just how much a good scary story can stick in your mind. But I also think there's just a certain charm to creepypasta in that they're the result of someone sitting in their room writing a story for the internet because they think it'll be cool. Creepypastas often come from small personal places. They're not made to make money. They're made because someone out there had an idea for a scary story they thought was cool, so they wrote it out and put it out there for all the world to see. And I think the medium of creepypasta has allowed for this really cool online space for people to come up with scary stories and share them with each other simply for the love of the game. I truly think creepypastas are scary campfire stories for the internet age. And again, these stories helped introduce me to what is now my favorite genre of fiction. And that leads me to my own creepypasta. The Public Transport Killer is a story about a police detective named Stuart Brown who is investigating the case of a serial killer who targets people who catch the bus. I experimented a bit with this story by combining writing with another one of my main passions, photography. I suppose on a subconscious level, part of how I got the idea was because while creepypastas are mostly prose, many of the more famous ones are linked to certain images. And I think some of these images are pretty damn effective and are probably more famous than the stories themselves a lot of the time. Just as one example, I'm not the biggest fan of Jeff the Killer, to say the least, but I think this image is undeniably pretty iconic at this point. So I suppose, again, even if it was subconscious, I thought, what if you had a creepypasta that was littered with imagery? I first got the idea to write a creepypasta at all when I was going on a walk around my neighborhood one night, and I saw this creepy looking van just parked in this empty space. I took the photo that you were looking at now, and I knew instantly that I wanted to make some sort of horror thing out of this picture. It wasn't even necessarily a creepypasta at first, but I just knew I wanted to create, again, just some horror thing out of this picture. I didn't have a plot in mind for quite some time, but I kept a lookout for, just any form of inspiration. One day, me and a couple friends walked down to my local shops, and when we came back, there was some police activity going on in my neighborhood, so I snagged this sneaky photo. Then later on one day, I was on my way to uni when I saw a police car parked in front of the bus I catch, and it was then I knew I had my plot. And from there, The Public Transport Killer was written. Overall, I'm really proud of this story. It may not be perfect, but I had a really great time writing it and getting all the pictures. I found it fun to just experiment and create this little story for the love of scary stories. I also got a handful of my awesome friends to get on board with this project and lend their faces to me so I could make them characters in the story, which was just really awesome. I'm so grateful for that. Thank you guys if you're watching this video. It means a lot to me. This story in its current visual form literally could not have happened without you guys, and I really appreciate you being a part of this project. Speaking back to you guys watching this video, you may recognize one of my friends in this story as Super Raphael 64, formerly known as Raphael the Film Nerd. So, thanks, Raphael. So yeah, that just about summarizes what the story is and why I wrote it. But if you guys would be willing to indulge in me, I would now like to do a reading of this story, akin to the creepypasta narration videos of old, complete with all the pictures I took for it. Let's get right into it. My name is Stuart Brown. I'm a police detective in a small town called Glenridge. I won't bore you with a list of my accomplishments for two reasons. One, I like to think I'm a fairly ordinary guy. I don't like to think of myself as any different than a retail worker or the owner of the bakery near my house. While my work is a lot more dangerous and I am in a position to enforce the law, when I'm not on duty, I'm an average family man. I treat my wife well, and I play frisbee with my kids in the yard. I don't want to pretend I'm someone I'm not. Two, Glenridge is a relatively sleepy town with, thankfully, very little crime. The worst we usually have to deal with are teenagers graffitiing on the walls of small businesses or the odd burglary. Glenridge is a rural, wooded place. I honestly think there is more forest than there is town. This isn't New York City. We are a humble community, and most of us lead humble lives. To act like I'm solving crazy cases like something you'd see in a crime thriller would be just plain dishonest of me. Murder is extremely rare in Glenridge, let alone serial murder. And I think that makes the case I'm about to tell you about all the more puzzling. You see, I didn't lie when I said there is very little crime down here. There's not. But there was one case, a case I helmed, that shook the populace of Glenridge to its core. A case completely unlike anything we have seen here before or since. A case that still keeps me up at night to this day. Let's start at the beginning. Between March 12th and March 18th, 2023, 3 people went missing. Their names were Alex Donovan, Ellis Reed, and Oliver Bailey. It became apparent to us pretty quickly that the disappearances were not isolated incidents, not just because of the short time difference between them, but for another simpler reason. After each disappearance, a belonging of each person was found deliberately placed somewhere so that it would be discovered. On the 13th of March, Alex Donovan was reported missing. Jennifer, his mother, who he still lived with, said she had asked him to go out and get some groceries, and that he had not returned home and was not answering his phone. The following morning, a desecrated straw hat was found hanging from the chain bridge of a playground near where Alex and Jennifer lived. The hat was torn quite violently, as though the wearer was brutally attacked. Jennifer later confirmed that it was Alex's favorite hat and that he had put it on before leaving the house. On the 15th of March, a witness came into the station and filed a report claiming he had found a shoe beside a puddle during his walk last night. He said the shoe looked too clean to have been left there for hours, like it had been delicately placed, and recently too. Not long after, he saw a white van driving through the woods nearby. He managed to get a photo of the vehicle, but was unable to catch the license plate. Coincidentally, the night the witness claimed this happened was the same night Ellis Reed was reported missing. The Reed family dog had run out into the night, Ellis chased after it, and never came back. We had the witness lead us to the shoe, bagged it as evidence, and then showed it to the Reed family, who promptly confirmed that it belonged to Ellis. On the 17th of March, Oliver Bailey's girlfriend reported him missing. Oliver was a photographer who sold pictures on his personal website. The day prior, he had gone out into the forest to take some photos, and just like Alex and Ellis before him, he never came home. A jogger discovered his camera hanging on a tree branch beside the footpath she was running down, and she handed it over to us. Most of the pictures taken the day of Oliver's disappearance didn't seem out of the ordinary, but the last picture was deeply alarming. It was blurry and chaotic, clearly taken by accident mid-motion. It showed a man dressed in a pink hoodie and a purple mask. He was wielding what appeared to be a hammer, which he was swinging at Oliver. At first, there didn't seem to be any consistency to who was being abducted. They were complete strangers to each other and lived in entirely different corners of Glenridge. After thoroughly questioning each person's respective familiars, we discovered the one thing linking them. They all caught the bus to get around town. Once we had learned this, the first thing we did was temporarily shut down bus services across Glenridge. Then, we reviewed the bus's CCTV footage from the past week. After sifting through hundreds of hours of the stuff, we had narrowed down a suspect. On 3 different days, a man had been recorded on 3 different buses and had gotten off at the same time as each of the victims. Facial recognition software revealed the man's identity: Vincent Costello. The following morning, we drove down to Vincent's neighborhood, pulled him over on his way to work, and arrested him on the spot. I remember he didn't seem particularly surprised. If anything, he seemed a bit relieved. When we took him down to the station and interrogated him, he said he wanted to make it extremely clear that he wasn't the killer, but that he admits to being in on the disappearances. When I asked him to clarify what he meant by killer, he told me that the disappeared were almost certainly dead. This was all a bit much, so I told him to slow down and start from the beginning. He said he wanted it to be known that he wasn't a criminal by nature, nor did he have any intentions of being involved in any of this. He was an average Joe, an ordinary family man. His wife, Ramona, had recently given birth to their daughter, Maya, and it was the happiest day of their lives. One night, a man in a purple mask broke into their home. He tied him and Ramona up and then took Maya from her crib. He threatened to kill the 3 of them unless Vincent did him a favor. Vincent was to catch 3 different buses, pick a random person to follow home on each, and make a note of their addresses. It really was that arbitrary. It did not matter to him who they were, he said with grim clarity. Afterwards, he was to routinely meet up with the man under a tunnel and give him the notes. I'm still haunted by something Vincent told me that day. Tearfully and with clenched teeth, he bellowed, "You have to understand! The sick bastard was holding my infant daughter in his hands!" I couldn't help but think of my own Toby and Gracie when they were born, and the things I wouldn't do to protect them, the ends I wouldn't go to. I most definitely saw myself in the weeping man before me. I wanted nothing more than to release him back to his family, but the fact of the matter was, he had confessed to stalking an accomplice to murder. I prayed his sentence would be greatly reduced on account of duress. A few days after Vincent's arrest, I was sitting at my desk when the station got a strange phone call. The caller had requested me specifically. I answered the phone and was greeted by raspy speech garbled by a voice changer. "Don't bother with a trace, detective. I won't be on the line for long enough." It didn't take a genius to know who was talking. The killer provided me with an address and then immediately hung up. For a moment, I was in a state of shock, but I quickly snapped out of it and informed my fellow officers of the address. We instantly began making our way over to it. The drive there from the station was 30 minutes long, and the journey took us outside of Glenridge and into the countryside. The address was an old, derelict house that stood alone amidst an empty field. It was incredibly weathered and dilapidated. It didn't look like anyone had lived there in several decades. Upon entering the place, we were assaulted by a foul stench. It was so ungodly that it was ironically quite easy to track down its source. What wasn't so easy was the sight that befell us once we did. What we saw was so horrible that I don't even want to write it down. To do so would conjure the image in my head, and it's that very image I wish I could forget. But I know I never will, and I knew it would come to this when I started writing this out. So I may as well stop stalling. We had found Alex, Ellis, and Oliver. As Vincent had warned us, they were dead, but unfortunately there's more to it than that. They had been stabbed 30 times each, and their wide-open mouths were haphazardly sewn together in an everlasting kiss, as though the killer intended the display to be some sort of grotesque, perverted art piece. There was blood everywhere. I felt bile rise up to my throat. I've never felt more physically ill than I did on that day. I'm sure my fellow officers would share that sentiment. We stood there for a good long while, totally silent, unable to process the horrific sight before us. It has been 3 years since this case, and nothing more has been heard from the public transport killer. No new developments, no new clues, no new evidence, nothing. No new murders, at least. I should find some comfort in that. At least he's not killing anymore, right? But I don't find any comfort. Instead, I find myself obsessed with this case and the man behind it. I keep telling myself to move on, to not ruminate about it, about him. But no matter what I do, he finds a way to haunt my conscience. Maybe he leads a normal life. Maybe he has a wife and kids. Maybe he works a good job. Maybe on the day of his funeral, his loved ones will remember him as a great man. For all I know, I've walked past him before. I sometimes have nightmares about the day we found those bodies, and when I awake in a cold sweat, these thoughts creep into my mind. I also find myself thinking of Vincent. The thing that troubles me about his involvement in all of this is that the killer didn't need an accomplice to pull this off. There was nothing stopping him from following the buses with his van, or from simply waiting at bus stops and then following people home himself from there. The only sense I could make of it was that it was some sort of power thing, some sick thrill from having control over somebody. Ultimately, I think Vincent was just another life for him to destroy, another man to tear away from his family, just not through his demise. I think back to the moment he called me. He clearly knew who I was. He had to call the station and request me specifically, by name. Knowing this guy, he possibly knows where I live. He could have killed me at any point. I wonder why he didn't. I wonder why he hasn't. Maybe I should accept the probability that I think about him more than he thinks about me. I've come to realize that merely thinking about this case has only led to it swirling round and round in my mind, driving me increasingly mad with each passing day. And so that is why I am now writing it down. This is my desperate attempt to exorcise it from my head. By sharing this story with you, by putting it into the words I didn't have on that fateful day, I may find something resembling inner peace. Maybe now I can finally move on with my life. Maybe now my nights won't be so tortured. When I signed up to be a police officer, I knew my work wouldn't be pleasant, but nothing could have prepared me for this. The world can be a cruel, vile place, but it was always a place I thought I could make heads or tails of. The world used to make sense to me, but now it doesn't anymore. So yeah, that was my creepypasta. I hope you guys enjoyed that little narration / reading / whatever you want to call it. So as I mentioned before, this story's been up on my Instagram for about a week now. But I recently made a Reddit account and I put it up on r/creepypasta. So I guess this is a time to announce that I have a Reddit account. I'm probably going to be posting some stuff on there. So If you have a Reddit account, go follow me. Also, in case you didn't notice it, I tagged the story on Reddit as NSFW purely because the part where they find the bodies at the end is a bit graphic and I wanted to err on the side of caution with r/creepypasta's rules. So for people who don't have Instagram and for people whose accounts aren't over the age of 18 on Reddit, I have also provided a PDF version. So yeah, all three links, one for the Instagram page, one for the Reddit page, and one for the PDF, they'll all be in the description below. I've also submitted just the text to creepypasta.com, so you know, hopefully my submission gets accepted. If not, oh well, but you know, fingers crossed. Oh, and here are the credits. You know, special thanks again to all my wonderful friends for agreeing to, you know, lend a hand in creating this project. And, you know, shout out to Ken Kissler. He took the abandoned house picture. I did not go into an abandoned house for this project, so go show Ken some love. I don't know the man personally. I downloaded his picture off publicdomainpictures.net, but he has a good eye. And well, I think that's everything I wanted to say. So next video, we'll be back to business as usual. I'll be doing the top 5 best and worst movies of 2025 videos, so look forward to those. And in the meantime, you can find me on other websites. I do written reviews over on Letterboxd, Backlogged, Serialized, and Goodreads. And I also do photography and stuff like The Public Transport Killer over on Instagram. So go follow me on those if that sounds interesting to you. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please be sure to smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Your support really helps out, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye!